this is the Business and Economic Forum with my guest and regular guest, Mr. Alex Chuchu Jones, a financial analyst and consultant. Mr. Jones, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here.
Next, our regular on the Business and Economic Forum, Professor Dr. George Gumpu. Dr. Gumpu, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be here.
Right, Professor Gumpu is an economic professor and also former Deputy Finance Minister, Republic of Liberia. Now, starting for the first time, welcome, drum roll, Mr. Depu Zuo. Mr. Zuo, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ja. It's my pleasure to be here tonight.
Great. Mr. Depu Zuo is an economic and community development, those are expertise. He has more than 10-year experience in policy research and analysis, public sector management, community development, and academia. He has 4 years public sector leadership experience at ministerial level, responsible for bilateral and multilateral development programs. He has a MSc in economic development, that's in 2007 from Southern New Hampshire University. Master MA with distinction in community development from North Park University, Chicago, Illinois. BSc in economics from the University of Liberia. Certificate in macroeconomics, Diagnostic International Monetary Fund. Certificate in financial programming and policies, International Monetary Fund, that's in Washington, D.C. He has a good working experience, and one of it is consultant and policy advisor to the Minister of the Propo Agenda for Prosperity and Development at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. Once again, sir, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ja.
All right. Before we begin our show, we want to observe a moment of silence for the tragedy that went on in Monrovia last night when 27 or 28 kids lost their life in a tragic accident, fire. So let's take 30 seconds and observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Very, very sad indeed. We have there's a school in Monrovia, a dormitory, and a fire believed to be caused by some electrical issue. There was fire, and the first report said 26 kids, some said 27, and now the latest number I see is 28 kids got burned and all died in the fire. That's horrible. So I want us to begin with that, even as sad as it is, but it has, so let me just hear your thoughts on this. Start with you, Dr. Gumpu.
Yeah, that tragedy was so sad. And I'd like to, I think I would like to extend my sympathy to the bereaved families and also to the affected relatives as well. And I think this should be a wake-up call when something like this happens. I think the legacy of it should be for policymakers to become more careful as they provide charters to these institutions, because no school operates, no school organizes a dormitory without the government's approval. So the approval process needs to be more rigorous, to do supervision in those places in order to ensure that there's fire escape route should there be a fire, and in order to ensure that these places are conducive for children to be before they can receive accreditation or before they can receive charters to operate. So when we're seeing this, it tells us that there are still more cases to be looked at immediately.
Yeah. Mr. Jones, your thoughts?
Again, it's a very sad moment. Unfortunately, on top of everything that's going on,
Can you speak up a little bit louder?
Yes, yes. Am I audible?
You're audible, but just give
Okay.
us more volume.
So it's a very sad day for Liberia and for all parents to lose a child for this unfortunate incident. Again, these are the effects of bad economic planning, the effect of poverty, the effect of the lack of working together as a people to ensure our children that no child in Liberia goes through such a tragedy again.
You still want you to speak a little louder. Your volume is low.
Okay, so we hope that we hope this is a wake-up call, as Dr. Gompu said, and that we do something about it, and not just send condolences, but we use this this moment to reflect on what we can do as a people to making sure that the basic things of safety and security for our children are available.
Mr. Zua?
Yes, thank you. For me, I've really been thinking about how the parents feeling right now, because I know why it is to even take care of a pregnancy, the cost of maintaining the home to take care of the child, and the children reach more than 5, 6 years old, some of them 12, 15, teenagers, just being killed just because of some minor or negligence on the part of policymaker and even the school administration to take precaution on safety matter. So the cost is very huge to the society. We're talking about 28 future leaders. And we know why it is for the country to lose just one citizen. And now we're talking about 28%, including instructors, people who are taking so many years to acquire education, have been contributing positively to the society. We also have a cost to the society. So for me, it's a sad day for the country. We all need to look at it comprehensively and see how best we can prevent that from happening. And I would think that this should be a lesson to all of us, be it Liberian partners in Liberia, every one of us that are involved with education industry should take serious lesson from this incident. Look at so many safety rules and guidelines that we will not be going back to this kind of a tragedy anymore as a country.
Right.
It's more than a war. I think so. It's more than civil war. Talk about massacre, it's more than a massacre. That's right there.
And that's what when I first saw it, when I saw the bodies being wrapped up, the first thing that came to my mind, maybe I overreacted, was a big word. I said genocide.
That's it.
I really cannot imagine, what were the conditions like? Were they all in? How many people were in a room? How did it look like? How has it been? And where did the fire start? And how did it get to the kids? I saw pictures of 2 kids that escaped the set. So how did these things happen? Most of the time, and we can quickly talk about the economics of it, because sometimes schools, almost every religious center, churches, now mosques, everybody wants to have a school.
Yes.
People in the States, you go back and you want to start a school, has a way of making money. I'm not saying that's what happened in this situation, but I just have these questions as to, what happened? How did it happen? Why, like you all said about safety, before you even operate a daycare for 2 kids in your house, a lot of inspection, a lot of rules to go by. What happened in this case? Who's responsible? Why did it happen? Are there other issues like this waiting to occur in Liberia as we speak? What are the next steps? Why do we have what are some of the economic implications? Let me start with you, Mr. Zuo, you were in Liberia quite recently and even served in the Pro government. So you have some fresh data.
Thank you very much. I actually provided consultancy for the Pro agenda. But one thing I will look at in terms of the cost of the government is, first of all, the disaster management agency that have been set up is not yet fully capacitated with the available resources in terms of finances and logistics to respond to such a situation. That means they're going to go extra mile into other unplanned budgetary expenditure to go and take care of this situation. Besides that, I know my recent experience, similar thing happened in Dua Zone where 3 kids left in the house and got burned. It took the response time, it was longer. In fact, it was a representative and other neighbors, all of us got rushed there to rescue the kids. In fact, they were already dead. It's the same situation now. So it's a serious problem in terms of planning. That's what makes it very much important that every country, the best thing to do is to have a national development plan. And from the plan, you will be able to mobilize resources and implement it for the best of the country and not to go off track of your plan. So for now, parents who lost their children, they will really need, besides the food that they will be looking for, they need some counseling and it requires money. They will need some response in terms of trauma healing and all of these processes will have to really take place. In fact, the imam that are running the school, he and his family, how they handled the project in the past is something that government have to come in, humanitarian organizations have to come in. It now become cost to the society. So we all have to see how best we can provide support for that. And I can tell you that in terms of implication on the economy, it's still high, it's a huge cost to them because most of the parents, I don't think they will have the ability to use their regular activity if they were, marketers, especially where they are located. Many of them will not have the ability now to use a sale to go back to the market. Things will get difficult for them as parents to recover. The recovery will be a tough challenge for them.
I was in Monrovia in 2017. And before regular household go to bed, the way they lock the door for safety reasons, it's like if there's fire, there's just no way. If there's just a little bit of smoke, there's just no way you can get out because there are layers and layers of iron bars and locks and everything that make it almost impossible for anybody to escape, especially if you have to escape through just one route. Our building codes and everything else. Maybe I'm too American. Dr. Gompo, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to take off from what you just said, I think, we are in a modern world and we have to rise as a country to integrate into the modern world. We cannot run a society in a city such as Monrovia with over 1 million people now, and we do not have functioning fire extinction facilities to respond to these types of things when they happen. And because we're in this type of situation, prevention can be very helpful in the sense that we have to have a robust supervision and examination sector or segment, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Public Works. All of these agencies need to have inspection units to basically go out to some of these, to all of these institutions to ensure that, as you said, the building codes are being adhered to, that there are expectations and plans for what happens if there's a fire. How do you get out? How do the children get out, especially for these schools? So if we cannot even do it for each and every home, which we should, at least let's begin with the public places such as schools. And when it comes to some of these institutions that call themselves religious institutions, I do not think government should lower the standards, because most of the time people tend to use religion as a shield for having the liberty to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
So if people assume that because this is a religious institution, is a Islamic institution, or is a Christian institution, and therefore the people who run it will be more careful, they will be more loving, because they are serving God, and therefore they want to put the priority of the children first, then I think that we might be making more and more mistakes. So I think there should be standards, there should be guidelines, and everyone should adhere to these guidelines, especially when it comes to putting children in residential facilities, because I understand some of the religious institutions get parents to commit these kids for their entire lives to just go and learn these religious teachings, which has so many other kind of implications. When you go to Nigeria today, some of the problem they're having there with Boko Haram is related to some of the way in which some of this education occurs. Parents just, commit their children because of poverty and other things, and the children stay there forever. And then it becomes a place where some of these organizations can recruit, because these children learn nothing else but religion. So there are deeper questions that we need to look at.
That's true. Let me go to you, Mr. Jones, for the final comments on this topic so we can move to our today's discussion. Should someone go to jail for this?
I think a lot of people should go to jail, including those who are responsible for safety. It's a crime. It's the greatest crime of all. And unless we start setting example, people talk about the war crimes and the economic crimes, but when you withhold funding from public safety, you're also committing a crime. When you one of the constitutional articles specify that you should provide economic safety protection for all Liberians, including children. So yes, people should go to jail for it. But the point I want to stress here is that why we want to put all these different mechanisms in place to ensure safety. We want fire alarms. We want all these things. All those things cost money. That's the bottom line. And if the country is not growing, the country does not have revenue, or is not adequately managing its revenue, or directing its revenue to investing it in the people, which is your greatest asset, then this is not going to go anywhere further. So we need to have fiscal management, where how much are we spending on travel as opposed to education, primary, elementary education? How much are we spending on entertainment, such as programming, when we have an inauguration or we have an Independence Day? How much are we spending? Could that money be adequately spent in terms of providing schools that would be where I would send my kid? I mean, and if I'm a minister of Liberia or I'm a president, I think my kids should go to the same school that every other child goes to. So I mean, that's the most important thing, because if my kids does not go into that school, then how would I take it important? How would I? So that there should be a law, and we're going to preach this, that if you're a public official, you're a senator, you're representative, you're president, your kids should go to the school that every other Liberian is going to. You should go to the hospital that every other Liberian is going to, or don't go into public service, period. We have to take these things seriously. And those who want to serve is not some windfall, but it should actually be service.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Our topic tonight is on this Business and Economic Forum is business and economic or business and financial education business and financial literacy. Our guests, Mr. Alex Jones, Dr. George Gompu, and Mr. Depu Zuo. Now, let's start with today's topic with basic definition. And I'll go to you, Dr. Gompu, to tell us what is business and financial education. How is it similar or different from business and financial literacy?
Okay, well, the business and financial education, and that should have also included economic education as well.
Sure.
But education in these fields is actually at a higher level where people earn degrees, bachelor's degree, associate degrees, master's degree, PhD degrees. So these are people who become equipped with knowledge and skills to serve institutions, to help to make policies, to help to guide policymakers. And financial literacy is more of the elementary aspect of business and financial education. It's almost like you have to go through elementary school before you get to high school. So basically, financial literacy is like the alphabet of financial, economic, and business education. In that, you learn basic things about how to prepare your personal budget, how to live within your means, how to understand interest rate and how it's calculated, how to understand terms of loans and requirement to get a loan.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, what are some of the, and maybe I spoke to you before that I'm allergic to money. And the reason being, when I was growing up in my community, when you're a guy, you love money, they say you're going to steal. If you're a woman, you love money, they say you're going to be, gruna or a prostitute. So I grew up not really learning about money. What's your experience and what's the impact of a society not being financially literate?
Well, as we can see with statistics, one of the highest death rate in the world, low income, disease, poverty. So those are the effects of lack of financial and economic literacy. I was fortunate that both of my parents were business people. My mom was a businesswoman, and so we all grew up from our household understanding money. My father was also had several businesses, so that's what drove me to go into business and finance and economics. So but the effects of it is unthinkable that every Liberian.
Can you talk a little louder?
Even if you live in the United
You're
States.
low.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. All right, can you hear me?
Okay.
Is it better?
Yeah,
better?
It's better.
Okay. Yeah, so I grew up very, at least understanding the concept of money, and does not mean that you have to be rich to understand what it takes to save, what it takes to invest. Today, you don't hear any of those things talked about in Liberia. Instead, everybody wants to be politician. Everybody wants to run for president or representative, which is unfortunate because if you don't have enough people that are generating income or selling or doing business in the country, how are you going to generate money to pay the legislators and the government officials? So that's our problem. We don't understand what it means to the simple concept of just understanding business or we live in a very competitive world where every country is competing against Liberia, and Liberia is competing against every country, large or small, whether it's India. And so when I listen to Liberians thinking that some European country is going to help them, or America or France, Yeah, joking, because these countries have more problems than they can handle. So we have to help ourselves. We have to help our industries. We have to control our banks. We have to start teaching economics, not just home economics, how to come home and cook cassava leaf, and what we're talking about from a very age, young women, young men, understand what's interest, understand time value of money. Okay, that if you put money aside, if you just have a money sitting today, it's losing value. You have to understand what is inflation. Those are not, you don't have to have an economic degree or finance degree. You can get a book called, Finance for Dummies. If you live in America, it's the same thing. What's your interest rate on your mortgage? Are you paying your credit cards off? Do you need to file bankruptcy so that you don't have to pay, unnecessary interest? So those are the things, hopefully, that we start to educate our people on.
Right. And that's very important, especially not just Liberia, but even those of us here, to be able to understand that you can be making $8 per hour and you take a $200,000 house, depending on overtime. So sometimes our expenses more than our income. But let me go to you, Mr. Zuo. You taught in Liberia. So let me go to you for business education. When you say you are going to school for business or finance, economics, and these things, what is the skill and knowledge that I learned, when someone does business or economics or get a finance degree? How does the curriculum look like? What students who go to learn these things, what skills and knowledge do they get upon graduation?
Okay, thank you. One good thing about this is that in Liberia, we have business program across the country, and we need to look at it carefully and to look at how the curriculum looks. What are some of the key skills that are required for job market? What is key skill that are required to have a startup business and all of these things? But one thing that there is that we look at it from the general perspective. When it comes to general business and that of economics, you gotta look at it different separately. General business courses will give you opportunity to look at basic principles of doing business in terms of business entity law. What are some of the things to differentiate between the owner of a business and how do you manage it in terms of income? What are some of the resources that are required to start a business? So basic thing that you need to do, how to set up your books in terms of accounting, bookkeeping, and the business courses will also, they have some education in terms of business law, how to actually register a business, and these things are all included in the curriculum. When it comes to economics, the good thing about it too is that you are learning about the business entity law and also looking at the principles, but you are also taught in terms of how you look at decision making and how you look at the overall economy in terms of production decision, consumption decision. So these are some of the things that are provided in the curriculum. And one good thing about it too is that the general business law in Liberia, we don't have specific course on finance, especially when it comes to the undergraduate program. Like in the United States, you can go and do your undergraduate in finance, or you go for a master in finance. And here, there in Liberia, right now, we don't have that except at the graduate program at University of Liberia and that of Cottington. But even at that, how do we really educate our students to understand, besides seeking job and opportunity with the central bank or going to work with a firm, which is like a commercial bank, how do you really apply this degree to your own life and create job opportunity? It's one thing that the school system has capacity constraint in. Because our system, one thing I just want to say here is that the research and instructional aspect of our education in Liberia is still a challenge. If the curriculum need to be structured in such a way that students will be able to do business project. As you do the theory, you are designing your project for graduation. These are some of the things that we need to do. We don't have it right now in our curriculum. When we were doing the review of the econ department syllabus at the University of Liberia in 2013, 2012, these are some of the things that we were considering, because for you to obtain a degree, you should be in a position to design a concept and come up with some theory and do data collection to inform your decision and come up with recommendation. So these are things that the school system in Liberia need to consider. I know some of the universities are doing that. I taught part-time at Stella Maris. They do that, allow the student to go for internship, and when they come back, they write their paper. The University of Liberia is doing that, but some department, is not all the departments are doing that. So it's something that we need to apply. Interestingly, I would say almost 60% of the college graduates in Liberia all come from business, but you don't see the application of the business knowledge in the street, because people are only taught to go and study in Paris, but you are not taught to come up with idea on how to start business and how to manage business.
Mr. Jones, you always have a problem with degrees and without practical experience or doing something. So I was looking at you when he was talking about, we have so many business graduates, yet we don't see the output. So if you were transplanting what you learn and what you know here in Liberia, you want to take what is done here, what would you recommend in terms of our business and financial education?
Well, first I think about overly educated instances. So unless you're gonna be a professor, like the great Dr. Gumpo, had two different masters in economics, unless you're teaching or you have a civic interest, you can do very well with a bachelor's degree. In fact, most of the people who are the richest today in the world, you're talking about Zuckerberg, whose platform many of you share, he doesn't have a bachelor's degree. You have the late Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. So what I would say is that, and Mr. Zoe hit the nail on the head. We need more practical education, meaning after your first 2 years of schooling, you need to have more case studies, more, like the students need to start watching CNBC, reading the Wall Street Journal, finding out if you're a finance major or business major, you need to know what's going on in the world. You need to know what an IPO is. You need to know how to open a brokerage account. What's a stock? What's a bond? Those are not things you're going to learn in the textbook, because by the time the textbooks come out, they already changed most of these things. So when you graduate, your 4-year degree is less relevant. So people need more practical education. I think Dr. Gumpo can speak towards that more. I think, as a matter of fact, some of his students will be coming on sometime in the future doing.
Yeah. Dr. Gumpo, and on the university side, but let's even go further back to high school, to grade school, because here I have kids in elementary, junior, and senior high school, and even as young as second grade, they do projects on budget. They sometimes when my son was in third grade, they give them a project. There's your money, and now you are making a trip to Europe. How are you going to spend this money and all those kind of things? So this concept I learned here in America very early. I don't think that's the case in Liberia.
Well, Dennis, and before I go, I don't think that the high school should focus on things like accounting or economics. I think high school in Liberia, the basic thing, know basic mathematics, and know how to read. If you can read or the high school or ninth grade, you can pick up any book, and you can literally learn. You can literally get almost a PhD today. We're all stepping into a classroom. You can go on Coursera and you can take courses at Harvard. Okay, the same courses that they take in a graduate. Not discouraging from the traditional, but most of the education today is self-taught. So high school people should focus on read a lot. For me personally, most of the things I learned in finance did not come from the classroom. At a very early stage in my undergrad, I started to read I was very curious. I wanted to understand money. I wanted to understand how the world works, how, why China is growing, even though they don't have democracy as in the Western countries. Why countries like Great Britain once ruled the world, today they're heavily indebted. I wanted to understand those things, and I didn't learn it from most textbooks or in my classroom. So what I would do is go online, read documentary, read about the British pound crash, read about the Great Depression, read about J.P. Morgan, and so those are all things that people in high school find an interest. Now, we're not saying everybody should be finance or economic major, but whatever that interest is, if you're a nurse, you know, do a lot of extracurriculum work. Study uh, people who came up with such different theories that I didn't know penicillin High was created until I started reading, and how they took the virus and the same virus became an antidote to cure.
Mr. Jones, sometimes if the concept is not introduced to you, you can't even know, what to look for to read. So if the concept of money or of running a business or how to manage finances, they don't have to teach you accounting in elementary school. But if you are introduced to, how do you give change and things like that, I think then you start building that concept. Because I remember I was doing a 003 or the zero level course of accounting at university. I couldn't understand mortgage. Nobody could explain it to me. So, Mr. Zuo, you want to jump in?
Yeah, that's where I want to come, because I know Jones is very practical. He's giving a good example. One of the things that there is that the environment itself has its own impact on people. From your experience, talking about 003, myself, I have my experience like that, because the first thing we're talking about having saving and checking account, and you don't usually have bank account, and how do you know reconciliation? How do you reconcile your statement at the end of the month? So one of the things that we actually, for me now, that do with students in Liberia is to give them the project, just give them an assignment, practical thing. Take, if it's about policy issue, take the policy document and give it to them and say, look, read this. What's the implication? What's the relationship between the theory and this academic document? So it's something that we need to be doing. That's what I said. The instructional and research aspect of our education in Liberia is very important. Why will you have a university degree and you have not had opportunity, first of all, to interact with the bank manager, to go on a field trip, to actually interact with bank teller, to know what a teller does versus what a manager does. What we're talking about treasury department in the bank, what do they do? Instead of you just sitting down and just obtaining a degree and you have no idea, you got a business degree, and someone asks you, oh, what's the responsibility of the treasury department, and you don't have answer to it. So these are things that we need to do now in our educational system, especially so when it comes to even just simple bookkeeping. You have so many people getting degree in accounting and management, but they themselves run shops, community shops. And you go there, they don't have, just entry, journal entry. They don't have daily sales recorded. They have everything up here and say, oh, I sold this amount today, 10 bottles of beer, but there's nothing there, no record. So how do we really, introduce our students to just simple bookkeeping on a daily basis? If they are in school, the semester, you tell them, say, if you're doing this course, at the end of the day, I want you to bring a project. You go to the community shop, go to an entertainment center, and that should be your project. And at the end of the semester, the student will learn now how, first of all, how do you look at sales? How do you look at inventory? These are some of the things that we need to do in our educational system. Without not even coming to the United States to look at the bond, you're talking about a stock market because the stock is not around, but the simplest thing that you want to do to make the student more creative in their education is to let them go see what people are doing. Why will you have a bachelor's degree holder and a full-time man who does not even have a high school degree? He sits and calculates, he becomes money exchanger. He sits and calculates, in fact, he come up with the exchange rate, and the guy can project when and how much will it be in the next 2 weeks because he's doing it practically. So how many of the students are going out to say, let's take stock of the exchange rate flow for the week, or sit with the central bank and say, one of the class instructor will call the central bank, research department. Maybe the director come. Like I did the last time at AMEU. I called one of the instructor from University of Liberia, also he worked with central bank. He knows more. In fact, he had done a publication on remittances. So I called him at AMEU and say, look, Mr. Mayakua, what's the trend right now? Considering the challenges we have, what's our position now in terms of diaspora engagement, in terms of remittance flow? He was able to provide the data. And that became more interactive discussion, and we were looking at the causes and some of the constraints why there's a mortality, why there's a reduction. Is it because of the American economy or because of the domestic economy? So when you do that, it gave the student the urge to go and look for practical idea. And how do I do this, and how can I expand the theory that I have learned? So these are some of the things that we need to do in our educational system in Liberia. And interestingly, most of our business schools, I don't see projects. I don't see business project for students. And they don't make it mandatory. We need to make that mandatory on our curriculum, that you should write a project, you should be able to implement a project before you complete. Even though you may not have the finances to start a business, but you can design a business proposal, a business plan, and write it better and execute it. After graduation, you can still go to a bank with that proposal and give it to a commercial bank. If it's found fit, they can now give you loan. Or you can go to the community club. And one of the things that there is that because the banking system has some rigidity in terms of lending, the informal, financial institution, the social clubs, this is who are now making more money. So you can still go and borrow from them and expand your idea and become a business practitioner.
That is correct. So, Dr. Gompo,
Yes.
you add that, let me add another layer to that before you come in. To what extent is the absence of these things that we are talking about related to or have any relationship to corruption?
Well, let me before I go on to corruption, let me just say that look, if we are preparing our people correctly, a bachelor's degree in Liberia, bachelor's degree in economics, or bachelor's degree in finance, or bachelor's degree in marketing, management in Liberia should be about equivalent to a bachelor's degree in the same area anywhere in the world. Because basically a bachelor's degree in economics, there are expectations about learning a body of knowledge. Same thing applies to accounting. Same thing applies to management. So generally a bachelor's degree is about 120 credit hours, and 15 of those credit hours supposed to be for general education. Okay, and then not 15, but 45 of those credit hours should be for general education, which will amount to about 15 courses if you're having a 3 credit hour course. Okay, and then the other 75 is supposed to be spent on some core courses and some courses in your areas of concentration. So in terms of general education, all people who go through a degree program should be just as competent, to be equally competent in terms of knowledge and skills. The knowledge being what you learn and skills being what you can do. So we must distinguish between degree as is written on paper and knowledge and skills in terms of what people actually learn. And I think that sometimes these two things tend to be confused. Sometimes we tend to think that degree is just the certificate you get at the end of your program. So the thing is that we are observing a situation where people are getting degrees in our country and even outside the country, and they cannot perform at elementary school level, even at 8th grade level. To basically analyze a document or write a document, personal letters. See, And that has implications for how we are, either how we are training our people or what people are learning. So when we hand these degrees to people and we deem them as qualified because they have these degrees, but they don't have the knowledge, it can be very dangerous for the society, it can be dangerous for the country. Take, for example, the situation recently where the IMF went to Liberia and was telling people in Liberia, authorities in Liberia, that your wage bill is too high. Okay? Why do we need the IMF to come from Washington, D.C. to tell us that our wage bill is too high? When people in Liberia did the same accounting, they did the same economics, they did the same microeconomics, they know how to add, they know how to subtract, they know how to multiply. Why would we need someone to tell us that we can't afford our wage bill before we get serious about it? So this issue of education and corruption, there's a link in the sense that if people are expected to have learned certain things because maybe they show up with the degrees or someone say they have the degree, and then we put them in particular kind of roles, and they have no clue on what's going on, and then they pretend as if they are in control, then so many things might be in their blind spot. People might be stealing right under their noses, and they have no way of telling. See? But on the other hand, they're all holding onto degrees, right? Various degrees. See, so there are some relationships, and it's also another area where we need a real to really wake up and recognize that learning and skill development is important, not just getting the paperwork in terms of getting these degrees, because there are so many fake degrees, fake institutions, bogus degrees as well.
Right, because I think that let's say, and even in terms of financial literacy and economic literacy, if we as individuals in the society, if we are, cognizant with this issue, we're talking about how to manage your own budget, because you can still take that skill on the government level, and when they are debating budget in the house, you have that idea. If you are able to read and understand income statements, so as to know the health of any firm that you want to work with, okay, you can easily tell if you understand what GDP is, so that politicians don't have to tell you, whether the economy is doing well or not, because you can look at the indicators and tell for yourself. But with no education, with no knowledge of these things, I think this is causing a lot of trouble. Alex, your thought?
Well, I mean, Dr. Gombo said it's the same economics and the same finance. I beg to differ. I mean, because even in the United States, there are people who have degrees and there are people who have degrees. All degrees are not equal. There are people who devote the time, they read, they push the limits of any field. Unfortunately, in Liberia, we tend to choose most of the people who are not enthusiastic about education, about their very degree. We choose people based on political connection or popularity. Someone who, for instance, and I will say this, who has never held a bank teller position in their life will become a finance minister. That's a recipe for disaster. At least know how the bank vault looks like. At least start as a deputy minister or a director and work your way up. So the problem, I think, is just the whole political structure and the way in which we use that now to solve economic problems. In the modern world, any advanced country, including developing countries like India or China, there is no way, even if you went to Cambridge or you went to Harvard, you're going to graduate from there cum laude. You're not going to go ahead of bank. You're not going to even probably become a senior VP. So, and somebody there may be your boss who you have more education than. Because the reason is that you have to have experience, and what's lacking in Liberia is practical experience. So people will come the day they graduate, they will get 5, 6 different MBAs or whatever degree, and they go right back to Liberia. The next thing you find, this person is a minister, this person, even I will consider myself an experienced, finance, economics person. But even if I was offered a position like a minister of finance, I would rather say, let me be an advisor first or deputy minister. Let me understand what's going on, because I don't want to ruin my reputation.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think it's the degree. I think in Liberia, like Mr. Zoe said, that the experience is not there. There's not a lot of opportunity for people to grow. And I hope this show, like for instance, today we have internet, we have Facebook. What are Liberians doing on Facebook? They're talking about football, stupid game. And I like sport. I'm a sportsman. I play tennis, I play golf, I play all the sports in the world. But the national team in Liberia has now won. We're investing only in the national team. We have tennis, we have other sports, we have kickball. So we're talking politics, or we're talking sports, or we're talking all these things, which are extracurricular things. Again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it wrong. But what I'm saying is that we could be using our same Facebook time to have online courses. You have professors here like Dr. Gompu, that if you're a student at the University of Liberia, you're curious, this should be your show. Come ask questions. Come and say, look, there's certain things happening. What's happening? Why Liberians don't have a lot of businesses? What can we do together? We can use the technology for good, or we can use it for pleasure.
No, you are correct. Before you come in, Mr. Zuo, I want to bring in our callers. So callers, if you are there, what we're going to do is we're going to use our conference line. So if you dial in, just wait in the queue. At the appropriate time, we will unmute you, and then you'll be able to ask your question. Okay. So we can have as many people calling into the line. You can have 10 callers at a time. You will enter a queue, and then we're going to allow you one at a time to make your comment or ask a question. So yeah, one professor in Liberia even asked how we can leverage this technology to teach classes in Liberia. Why in the States? Mr. Zuo, your comments.
Yes, thank you. I know the issue of technology and education is very much key for developing countries. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the Sustainable Development Goal is actually focused on how best we can help developing nations to come on par with the developed nation. For Liberia to be specific, one of the things that really, in terms of this corruption versus educational background issue, my contribution there is that personally, when I left this country in 2008, I went to Liberia. I felt that we have more political sensitivity than economic sensitivity in Liberia. If you ask a young child, a high school kid, the child will tell you, first of all, the total number of legislators, in fact, the county officials, and they know their name and their experience, their family, everything about them. But not one of them able to tell you how much he or she needs to go to school a semester and how much will it cost them for the next semester. And the next thing that there is that they don't even know what is the budget for their home. How much will it cost them to even feed a family? The same thing goes with parents. So the thing about it is that many people talk about, public sector. But the thing about it is that the political sensitivity being so high, so when people don't have that economic sensitivity, they don't even know the wealth management in terms of resource management, how to even manage their time, how to manage their talent, the skills, and the resources, the clothes, the events that they have. It becomes difficult for the person to manage the public sector. That put the country into total chaos. And one of the things that there is that because of the political sensitivity, most of the decisions that are being made in the public sector, we don't look at the cost-benefit decision. We don't do the cost-benefit analysis. If we actually spend $10,000 today on just entertainment of holiday or July 26th, how much is it that going to cost us Were we not to use 10,000 to put a generator on at the hospital? That's a simple logic. You keep the hospital generator running, it means that you're going to save life. The people who are actually saved from that hospital are going to produce and the economy will boom. But if you take the money today and use it for just a celebration afterwards and the hospital collapse, what happened? Besides losing the staff out there not going to work and not getting paid, you're also talking about losing life.
Yeah.
And that also affects the economy. So people who are making decisions in the public sector, if they didn't say a cognizant of what the decision-making process is in terms of economic cost and benefit, they will be making the decision. And that's one of the things our school system need to really be doing. Our education system need to be looking at very practical things you need to do. It's not all about the degree. The economic literacy, financial literacy, it should not only be, concentrated in the classroom. The one side of it, our public sector management, what is happening with the NGO circle, the civil society, besides this academic thing we're doing? You will see that our development program, most of the civil society focus more on something that has to do with what? Human rights, which is good. It brings about stability. They talk about, agriculture or just giving loan. But how are they looking at, in terms of economic cooperation, community economic development, how are they looking at it? Because there's no funding there. We don't have partner giving funding to that area. As a result, there's no community sensitization on what decision making. How do they do project? How do they do community project? How do they make decisions at the community level? These things are now what the priority for our NGOs. Yeah. And just, you can look at it today. If we happen to have community-based organization doing these things, if we happen to have students doing it, volunteers will go there to do it, to help, because they will see it more as a priority. They might take it as a what? Project volunteer. Student will go and say, let me volunteer because I have a project to write on business administration. So I'm going to go to this community organization, or I'm going to go to this NGO and volunteer so I can use that as my what? Case study or my project for graduation. These are things that we need to be doing. These are more practical. It also brings that sensitivity just to the community and to the public as a whole.
Right. So let me bring in our audience to join the discussion. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing business and financial education. My guests, once again, Mr. Zuo, Dr. Gompu, and Mr. Jones. So we have callers on the line. Can you remove the share screen, Alex? Right. So we have callers on the line, so we would want to listen to our first caller. Caller, hello, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, your question or comment.
All right, thank you guys. There in studio, hi, Gompu. You see, the topic you guys are discussing is at the core of the university studies in Liberia.
First of all, your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Darling Wawu. I'm calling from Massachusetts.
Thank you, darling. Your question, go ahead.
Actually, I'm gonna make a comment and express some concerns regarding the educational system in Liberia.
Great.
What we are doing in Liberia, honestly, when you leave Liberia and travel abroad and enroll in one of the universities, sometimes you ask yourself whether you actually went to school or what were you doing back home. Because back there, instructors do not even encourage students to go to the library to read. Everything there is either pamphlet or they ask you to pay them some money and it sounds great to you. Out of the thousands of students that are enrolled at the Bureau universities in Liberia, probably 10% are actually doing a sincere study. But the rest is a total disaster.
Wow.
The instructors are not encouraging people. They teach you materials that They don't even teach you to understand. And there are no materials. The University of Liberia, the library there, everything there is archaic, old. And students are not even encouraged to go and read because at the end of the day, they had to give the instructor some kind of a few dollars here and there. And more besides, the very few that are sincerely learning are not even afforded opportunity. Because what we learn in Liberia, to be very honest, is imaginary. It's imaginary. Imagine a student that graduated from the University of Liberia with a bachelor's degree in accounting or economics will come to the U.S. or go to the U.K. and is unable to prepare a simple tax return. Because we're never taught that. The 4 or 5 or 6 years that we stay at the University of Liberia or other universities, we were never taught how to prepare tax work. So as a result, we come here, we are running all over the place looking for somebody to prepare our taxes for something as simple as preparing taxes. Because those things are not priority. I don't know, because we probably don't file taxes in Liberia, but it's a serious issue back there, and you guys are discussing something very serious.
Thank you, but let me bring you to this. You know, nobody teach you the Zegue. You yourself go under the Palava also. Why don't students too kind of go after these things instead of maybe because as Mr. Zuo said, the political consciousness is so high that everything else is taking backseat. Because students can take upon themselves.
My brother, I will not agree with that entirely. There are, like I told you, about 10% of those out of the 1,000 students who are very serious and are sincerely learn. How will you learn how to prepare tax when they know you brought it to you? You are never taught that. First of all, the topic has to be introduced.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me say something.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, darling, I think you made a good comment in terms of the quality of our education. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, I think he made a good comment. Thank you for coming to the show and making your comment. You made a very good comment with respect to the quality of our education. I think it's a disaster. I think the Civil War has contributed to some of the problems we have. Because from my understanding, following the disarmament, many people traded in their arms for scholarship and other means to get into this educational institution. And as those students enroll in some of these institutions, it also presented a threat to some of the instructors. The standards were lower. Instructors are heard now that instructors became really afraid to fail any student. And so the whole idea of ending the war and building peace became so primary that people were willing to sacrifice anything, including just giving people grades and giving people degrees. And then in the meantime, to those who didn't want to study, started paying off these instructors. The last time I was in Liberia and I was teaching, and it seemed like people wanted to give me money for some favor. And I'm like, no, I have a higher income than you. How can you be giving me money? So there was a situation where I would go out with some of my students, that we maybe take them out to lunch, and I'm paying for the lunch. And they said, no, professor, we're supposed to pay for you. I said, no. You're telling me that you are not employed. Then how can you be giving me money? So the thing is that I think the Civil War had its own impact, and the standard.
I don't think Mr. Zuo agree with you, but let me bring in one more caller before Mr. Zuo come in. Call out your name and where you calling from.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today? How are you guys doing today?
Great. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Rose Joy Carmore, and I'm calling from Philadelphia, PA.
Rose Joy, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your question or comment? Thanks so much for calling.
My comment. So first of all, I want to say something about the beginning of the show about the people that what happened in Liberia yesterday.
Sure.
Again, I want to go up on from Dr. Gumbo. Like he said, we just can't run a country with people not having regulations and people are not paying attention. We have ran a country like that for so many years, and I think they need to come to a stop. Where did that start begin? With you, with me, and with everyone that's on our platform today. We need to find a way to have a voice that would tell our people that they deserve better than to just live in a country and people can just go there and do what they want to do. So I wanted to comment on that before I talk about the topic you guys talking about tonight. So what you guys talking about? I want to say there's so many people that go to college in Liberia for fine arts, and none of them own a business. Almost like the Lebanese man, I know they go to school for the Lebanese people to have all these businesses in their own country, but they're sitting in class and talking about fine arts. What do they use these things there? Do they have internship? Before they graduate from school, do they have internship? Because I think in the U.S., you should have internship so you can be able to be employed for that company or maybe other company that you will come in contact with. So are these things put into place? Or people just go to school and graduate? You know, our kids in school, like I was talking to my son today, you know, simple thing like showing the kids what kind of money, what the value of this money, and like my son said to me, Mom, I see you, how you use money. It also have to do with parenting. How do you talk to your kids? How do you do things in the household? Like the other guy, the teacher said on the platform. So all of these things need to come into action. We need to stop just looking at people with the degrees and all to do is come in and just talk. We need action. We need to start telling these people that we need to put things into place. You know, so again, thank you for the platform, and you know, this is a real good show, and we look forward in going more on this show.
Thank you so much, Rose, for coming.
Okay.
Let me go back to you, Mr. Zuo.
Yes, thank you very much. I think Darling comment was great, and also followed by Rose comment. But the reason why, for me, Dr. Gombo's comment about the effect of the Civil War is something important. I know that. But one thing we got to look at, in the time past, that Civil War capacity constraint and lack of capacity was an incentive in reaching out to mobilize support for the country. Equally so, that incentive has become disincentive because, for one fact, it's putting people in a weaker position not to become competitive. We are now becoming weaker as a nation. Check around us, the countries that actually ended their civil war after us or before us, see how far they've gone. We shouldn't be using a civil war as a reason to really be a weak nation. We need to hold people. Accountability is one thing that we have to look at. In the school system, Sierra Leone is there. In fact, people, interestingly, can you imagine University of Liberia professors are going to university, in Jalan University in Sierra Leone to go do graduate study, and they come back to Liberia to teach. Imagine that, where Sierra Leone have been. They've been through war. You go to next door in Cote d'Ivoire, people are also going to Cote d'Ivoire to get graduate degree from there. They went through civil war. The thing about it is that how do we really, as a country, first of all, how do we really put a system in place to make sure that the decision that we are making, it benefits us as individuals and also benefit the society? That's one of the things that we need to be looking at. The school system, people who came from civil war one day, but 14 years ago, that thing happened. In fact, 19 or 20 years ago, that happened. Well, are you telling me another generation that came up after the Civil War, will they have to be admitted under condition at university? No, we need to set standard. These are some of the reasons why you see today we have a fire disaster, because we don't want to have a standard in place. There's no accountability. School monitoring. You can have students in the school at a university, and you have the provost and the dean making sure that the instructors are coming to class on time. They are presenting the class. In fact, they make sure they exhaust the curriculum for the semester, and you're looking at the material. We don't have these things. These are supervision challenges. And I can tell you, in fact, just recently I gave a paper to some of the students at the university. to really study on the relationship between the MCSS school system and the city of Monrovia in development class. And they could not really get any document. They came back to me and said, oh, this thing is too tough. I said, no, I want you to look at the policy, first of all, the act creating MCSS school system, and look at this the MCC as a city. Why is it that the Ministry of Education is right here in Monrovia? Then we have created another bureaucracy that a high school within Monrovia City, public high school, is being controlled by another commission, and the Ministry of Education is right here supervising private institutions in the same city. What's the relationship? How do we really streamline it? Is there a long bureaucracy that also causing the weakness in the system that performance is dropping? How do we do it? Go and do the data collection. Tell me the reporting mechanism that in place so that the Ministry of Education will be able to rate the private institution in the same Monrovia and rate the public institution in Monrovia. How do they do it? Show me the data. They keep crying, and I'm still waiting for the paper, because the reality is that we need to look at practical things. Yeah. In as much as we're not going to come to the United States to look at all the data that are available, people going to school in America, you ask a question, you can just go online and get this thing. But equally so, we need to have a system in place that we can hold people accountable. When universities start to build relationship with offices and say, this University of Liberia will now look at Ministry of Education, the Department of Education at the University of Liberia will be working with Ministry of Education so that the teachers that are graduating from there will have placement, even though there might be constraints in terms of budget. But let the teachers work with Ministry of Education. While they are learning, they're also doing a practical in the field. They go to the high school and teach as part of their practical. That itself is something we don't need money for. We just need a plan. We need to look at the curriculum. We need to have a system in place. Look at Ministry of Health. You have so many health schools and that nursing school, all the program coming up. How strong are these nursing programs? Where do they have their demonstration lab? So another thing that how do they really graduate them? What are the yardsticks? So these are things that we're going to be looking at. While it's true that we're looking at the Civil War, I always now, for me, I said it 10 years ago, that I don't want to be discussing the Civil War anymore, because it put us in a weaker position. It doesn't make us to think that we should be challenged. Oh, the Civil War, I didn't know. Rwanda, look at Rwanda. Rwanda have become, in fact, technology hub in Africa. In fact, it's on a daily basis, I like to, in fact, follow President Kagame's Facebook page. Every time you see new development, the creativity and innovation came from where? The education system. And came from the technology. So
I think we have not been able to really find the link between our educational system and development, growth and development. Because, I was born in the interior. So there's nothing in my village that would tell me that will even encourage education. So what happens is anytime someone is educated, you have to leave your village because you don't fit there anymore. In fact, all the trees around there, their names are now in the book and you don't even know their names. Okay, so education, when we study about trees, all the trees are in America. When we do literature, it's somewhere else. So all these things. So Dr. Gompo, you've as a professor, when we go back to our educational system, we sometimes give WIEG or WASI and all those tests. And the purpose of those tests should be able to use that to evaluate the system and make recommendations and improve the curriculum. We country coming out of war. So yes, there are areas that need to be developed. So what have we started to say, okay, coming from war, or since we are out of war, this is the area we need to put attention to, priority, put more money in this field so as to develop people in this area. How do we kind of fix this educational system so that it benefits the country? Because right now, I don't think that we understand the link between the educational system and what the country needs to grow.
Yeah, I think very good question. Let me just clarify to Depu that when I'm talking about the role of the Civil War and the impact of the Civil War, I didn't mean to say that we should lower our standard, we should set standard much lower. because we have come out of a civil war. But the thing is, in order to know where we are going and to devise strategies to solve problems, we have to also consider the causes. The impact of the Civil War is not something that we can just forget that easily and just say, let's just forget it. No, it's still with us because, the very teachers who are teaching the people that are coming to this university, where did they, get educated? They got educated in the same system, which are very, very bad. So if the teachers don't know what they're doing, how can they educate people so as to give them the foundation to come to university and be able to do very good work? There's a serious problem there, so everything got destroyed during that Civil War. I'm not saying that this justified, but we must acknowledge it, and then we try to build.
Yeah.
As far back as during the normal days, Liberia was still importing instructors from Sierra Leone and other places. There were a number of Sierra Leoneans in Liberia teaching during the normal days. And I don't know whether it was the other way around, where Liberians were teaching in Sierra Leone during the normal days. I'm not, aware of that. But having said that, the issue of curriculum and the issue of even some of the problems we have, most of the Liberians will tell you that corruption is one of our biggest problems. We need to factor that into our curriculum. The institution that I'm at and a number of other institutions around here, we don't have a lot of corruption problems so much in the society. But in the business education here, we have courses in ethics that every student is required to take. And these are courses that got topics that deal with how do you behave when you are confronted with problem of corruption. If you get into an agency and you find that your boss is corrupt, your boss wants you to help in the corruption process, how do you handle those types of situations? On the one hand, you want a job. On the other hand, corruption is bad. So what do? So these things, we have some discussions in our ethics classes while the students are still young and learning. And when they get out there, although it may not answer all the questions, at least they have some foundation. I don't know whether our schools in Liberia are doing it, but I think these things need to be considered. The issue of peace building and conflict resolution, I think that might be, already in the curriculum there, but it needs to also be explicitly in the curriculum. And this can be in the, let's say, the general education curriculum, something that everyone needs to know. Because the fact of the matter is that sometimes people think going after corrupt people or talking about corruption is like, being against people or being even against the state. But the thing is, here we are, we want to rebuild this society. We want to build a new Southeastern highway. We want to build the Ganta-Harper Highway. We don't have the resources. We don't have the cash. So we have to go to other places or we want to find means to get loans for these things. But the thing is, if our corruption level is high, it means that those millions and millions of dollars people are making through corruption does not factor into our GDP. You see? So if let's say you sign a deal or you stole $50 million from the government, that becomes part of your income for that year. But that is not in GDP. It's not in GDP. So if corruption is high, we will be under-reporting our GDP. And when our GDP is low, nobody's going to give us any big loan because GDP is your income. So if you are very corrupt and you're not fighting those corruption, it will show that your income is very, very low, even though your income is not really low. And if your income is low, then you can't borrow because you're very poor. You see, so these are some of the kind of linkages to our development that we need to consider as we educate our young people, in our population. That when we're talking about these things, it's not a matter of people really hitting you and they don't want your pot to ball. But the thing is that this whole process of not allowing the resources, that is in the country to be properly accounted for is self-destructive.
Thank you, Dr. Gompo.
Can I ask a question to Dr. Gompo?
Yes.
Dr. Gompo, so are you willing to give an online ethics class on such a forum? Can you commit to a 30 minutes ethics class for any university student, any Liberian? We'll fund it. They can come on and you can give them a shot. Maybe want some of your old material from your school or something
Well,
like that.
anyway, the thing is that, again, when you want to give adequate and proper education, you got to focus on the area of expertise. You have to take that into consideration. Even though myself learned some of these things, I'm not an expert in ethics. I'm not an expert in that. Usually here at our school, we have a number of people who are like lawyers, law professors that teach the ethics classes, because it also has a crossover with law. See? So it's about rules and rule of law and enforcement of law. So
No, that is correct.
develop something in that, but it's not
So if any Liberian who's listening and have any expertise in ethics, please give Mr. Dennis a call. We arrange where once a month or something we'll have some kind of seminar where people can teleconference in, and I will be willing to sign up for that course as well and learn something.
very
So I
good.
think we should use this forum, because most of the times we keep talking about what the problems are, and we keep talking about what has happened. I think today we have to start looking at the possibilities of Liberia. Where do we go from here? Let's forget, like Mr. Zoe rightly said, the war is over. There are many countries that have much more devastating civil war, including America. The civil war in America, 600,000 people died. Okay, brothers upon brothers. So let's forget about the civil war. The question today is, how do we go forward, and what can we do? Whether you're in Liberia, you're a student, let's come together to start thinking of ideas. Because if we can't change the university, we have to find other means. We can do online seminars, we can do courses, one person. So those are the kind of area that I am focused on, like solution driven. Because the fact of the matter is, and I tell many people, politics is not going to solve Liberia problem, period. No president, you can bring Nelson Mandela from the grave and make him president of Liberia, I don't believe that is going to solve the problem. And the reason for that is not that he won't do a good job. Everything is broken. You don't have industries in your country, okay? You don't have, so even when people graduate, hundreds of people or 1,000 graduate, and they have no jobs because you don't have no industry. You don't have no farms. You don't have no, you don't produce anything. Even bicycle spike, you don't produce that. These are not things when we say manufacturing, you have to go and start producing cars tomorrow, but you can produce screws.
We used to produce ganga ball.
Ganga, wherever it takes, we got rubber. You can produce plastic.
But Alex, that brings me to, and the first place to start for people wanting to learn these things is tune in to focus on Liberia Business and Economic Forum and get the interest, get your appetite wet and say, oh, okay. Like when I came to the States, I was not even familiar about which course to take because I've not heard many things. Where I grew up, it was teacher, doctor, maybe accountant, that's it. So tune in to focus on Liberia. And one of the things we try to establish here through this forum is the Liberia Business and Economic Society. And as time goes by, we're going to talk to you about that society, you know, how to become a member and what the goals and objectives are of coming together as business, finance, and economic people to form a society. So that maybe someday if a government want to recruit someone, they can come to the society and say, you know, recommend somebody to be our bank governor, and so many things that we intend to do, starting from right here on this Business and Economic Forum. Next week, on this forum, we're going to be discussing the economics of food, you know, food security, you know, agriculture, that have to do with economics. You know, as Alex said earlier, our solution is not going to come from politics. You know, we can see all the loophole and run all the election. It's not going to change anything. But let me bring in my last caller so that we can, that's my last caller, and then we can conclude the show for tonight. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
It's Amson Jabba, calling from Louisiana.
Say again, you're breaking up.
It's Armstrong Jabba.
Armstrong, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your question or comment?
Thank you very much, my brother.
Okay.
You see, I was born in Sano County, Baikum in Liberia. Growing up as a little boy, my grandparents saw that I had so much interest in growing food, growing plants. So my grandfather and my grandmother, they taught me well. They taught me how to grow all vegetables. My grandmother was the one who taught me how to grow the parboiled rice, how to bake parboiled rice. She taught me. We could compare the two, the American parboiled and the one we were making. Our parboiled rice was better than the American parboiled rice. They taught me how to raise goats, chicken, pigs, rabbits, everything. I learned everything in Greenville City, Sano County, raising ducks and everything. My grandfather told me, this is real education. This is what they call education. What the people are learning in school is part of education, but it's just a little bit of education. He said, this is real education. That you yourself will know all these things and can do it on your own. Any part of the world you go, you will always have a job. My grandfather told me that. And for 2, I traveled the years, went to school, learned about growing plants, took it to another level. You see, took it to another level. What happened today in the U.S., in Louisiana, I'm one of the best. Whatever the farmers here want to know something about the insects or diseases, I mean, everything that has to do with it, before Amsterdam, I take care of it. I read the print. I don't have to use no book. I don't have to use book because myself, I'm a book already. I can just look at the plant and know exactly what's happening without book. Professors at the LSU, the university, whenever they can do something, I do it. I have more knowledge than the professors because of what my grandparents taught me in Sano County in Liberia. You see, there are certain things we need to understand. Number one, when it comes to education, we first have to understand what is education. Second, we have to understand what do it is. Third, we have to understand the purpose of education. And fourth, we have to understand the kind of system that we are using to educate our people. So let's start with the first education.
Thank you.
Education, according to my grandparents in Sano County, those traditional people, they taught me that education is knowing about everything in your environment, the importance of everything in your environment, and how to use them.
Thank you, Armstrong.
To improve your living condition.
Thank you.
How to use them.
Thank you so much for your,
hello?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay, let me say I know Armstrong. I mean, I've been watching his show. He has a show on food production, agriculture in Liberia. So he's a very interesting guy. So, you know, he has a whole show on agriculture. You know, I've been following it. So, so know that Armstrong, know that, you know, you're welcome, and that I've been following your show as well.
Thank you, my brother.
All right. So we have a few comments on Facebook that, you know, we cannot read now due to time, but let me just read a few of these comments, and we will be, while you prepare for your final thoughts as we close the broadcast. Darling, what would say corruption should be part of Liberian curriculum beginning from grade 1. Bernard Guai is, you know, is writing good about ethics in public and business administration. There's an article here that he shared on ethics in business and public administration. You can read that online. It has some references. And so, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming. As I said, next week we're going to go into agriculture, food and economics. All these things have to do with economics. There's an economic of rice, economics of everything that you have to do. So we're going to be treating that topic. Look out for the flyers, and and you're going to join us. So let's conclude now. Let me get our final thoughts from my guests. Let me start with you, our guest star. That's our first time guest tonight, Mr. Depu Zuo.
Yes, thank you so much. Before, I think I agree with that Gompo in terms of the issue of corruption. And I think where we're supposed to start it from is the educational system first, because in most of our neighboring countries, what they do, they penalize people when they actually steal the public test, which is wax or wire. But in Liberia, there's no penalty for that. We have a system that say they have reduced the flexibility fees that students were paying in high school. You still see them camping in one area. Even whenever you hear about school tests being stolen by school, we have never seen any penalty hearing that, okay, this student, as long as they stole a public test, they will be banned from entering college or they will be penalized for this. We haven't seen that. These are some of the areas, these are some of the loopholes that actually continue from high school to college. So there should be a way that schools will have its own standard in terms of curbing corruption. And they should be able to have a system in place. And that can be a part of the curriculum. And I think that the Ministry of Education and the Commission on Higher Education should actually consider these things as part of their policy agenda to ensure that it helps our system to improve. And lastly, I want to say that I appreciate this invitation, and it's a very good thing. Myself have had this talk all of the time in Liberia. Sometimes I'm only called to make contribution on economic issue and not political issue. And the reason there is simple. If people know how to put bread on their family table and know how to take care of their daily life and take care of their family and live healthily, they will not be focused on what happened to the legislature house, what happened to representatives. Now they will not be waiting for representatives to feed them, the family. So we need to see how best we can improve this. And once we start transparency and accountability in the school system, I know it will help at the end of the day, the cost of corruption to the nation, which is the poverty we have today, will reduce, and we can be a better nation and enjoy ourselves. And the prosperity we're talking about, this generation can actually have it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Gompo.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Dennis, for the show. I want to also thank our viewers and thank the other panelists, Alice and Depu for coming. Let me say that we all should be aware of how old our nation is within the African context. We are 172 years old now and counting. And in the West Africa sub-region, the ECOWAS region, we are running the risk of becoming the least developed country. We're running the risk of becoming the poorest in our neighborhood. And you know what happens when you live in a neighborhood and everybody start looking down on you because you are far behind on everything. Sooner or later, people will start stereotyping our nationality. When they call you a Liberian, you don't want a situation where people begin to judge you immediately that those are failures that are coming. Because they've come to help us. And if we don't get our act together, we could fall apart again, and they might be forced to come to help us because they don't want the fire to spread in their houses or in their neighborhood. And that's the kind of worry that other countries in West Africa now are beginning to feel, because the Civil War has been over, and we still are not getting our act together to move forward. The educational system can help when it comes to dealing with the issue of corruption in the country, but that's only one angle of it. There has to be seriousness with respect to prosecution. There has to be seriousness with respect to incarceration. There has to be seriousness with respect to adherence to the rule of law. Because again, when crimes are committed in the school and there's no one to prosecute, no one to incarcerate, you have a problem. NGO cannot do it on their own. You and I sitting here who want to be very passionate about moving the country forward cannot do it on our own. So you always need the political authorities. You always need those people in the legal authority. These things are all interrelated. And there's no way to try to develop the economy in isolation of what is happening in terms of the leadership. Look at the United States. The United States is what? 240 years old. We are 172 years old. What have America here today? Leadership plays an important role.
Yeah.
You can have good men in society, good teachers, and what have you. But still, leadership has its role to play. Who developed the curriculum? The curriculum for the whole country is developed at the university, at the Ministry of Education. And that curriculum basically tells people what they're supposed to be learning in first grade, what they're supposed to be learning in second grade. You cannot just go and throw in your own curriculum on your own. So the authorities still play an important role.
Okay.
This institution where I'm at today, the education we are giving here to these American students is about the same standard as what the South Africans are giving, because we are all accredited by the same body, the same international accrediting agency that accredits our institution here in New Jersey is the same one accrediting outstanding business schools in South Africa. And we can get it too in Liberia if we're serious and we get our act together.
Yeah,
so basically, we have a country that could be great, that has a lot of potential, that has a lot of young people, curious young people, passionate young people who are willing to work harder. But we, the adults, have to get serious. And we have to get serious about change in terms of action at all levels, not just in the schools. But the schools are critical. The educational system is critical. And we definitely have to stop giving degrees when people have not learned the material that is required. The quality of school is important. I'm supporting kids in Liberia in school. And they tell me that they're in the high schools, which are supposed to be some of the best high schools, and they got no books.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have a lot to do. And I think this show is a beginning, and it could be part of the solution. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And before I bring you in, Alex, there's a question here for you, Mr. Zuo, that I just want you to use 2 or 3 sentences to answer. And this question is from our regular listener, Mr. Jimmy Eastman. Say, I heard you mention you were a contributor to the Pro-Po agenda. My understanding was that there were goals forecast in this agenda, but were there objectives set to attain those goals? Was there a blueprint or plan to execute? How was the progress to be measured or monitored? Were there metrics in place? A lot of things, but just summarize for us in 2 or 3 sentences your response.
Yes, I think what he's asking for all written in the Pro-Po agenda. If we can download a soft copy, first of all, you see the priority, the high level priority, and you look at the sector priority. You see the metrics for the various sector. One of the things that there is that writing the policy is one thing, the implementation is another thing. So the government will now take responsibility, like that Kompu said, that you need leadership to implement that document. Liberia has so many good policy paper, good plan, implementation have been our challenge. And that's what I can tell the call.
Thank you. That was very brief and to the point. Mr. Jones, your closing statement, and just in your closing statement, tell us a little bit about the Liberia Business and Economic Society and also the show for next week.
And Dr. G, always a pleasure to join and be a part of the discussion. So the Liberian Business and Economic Forum The idea behind it is to bring Liberian business professionals, financial and economic professionals together to find solutions, and to also raise the standard where there will be ethics, there will be people of conscience. It won't be just everyone just seeking another opportunity in Liberia political structure. So it's a new society. We screen those who we anticipate to bring as members. You have to be able to, to come up with policy papers. You have to be able to contribute to Liberia economics. You have to be creative. So a very high standard to become a member of the Liberia business and economic society. It's not something where you can buy your way into, or because you're a minister or something. You have to earn your right. You have to debate issues. You have to be able to come on the show like this and talk about economic issues and not just hide behind your degrees. So that's basically the brainchild behind this show, just to discuss it and teach and educate and learn. So we're all from different backgrounds, but we're all striving to make Liberia and Africa, the Black community, a very prosperous community. So basically, that's what that is for. Our next show will be next Wednesday, same time, same place, and we'll be discussing food economics. Um, then we're going to be moving the show to Saturday. Dennis will announce the new schedule to accommodate more people in Liberia and other people on the weekends. So we're going to be moving to a Saturday for 2 weeks from now. So I don't know. Basically, it's a pleasure. Again, I am honored to be here. Ways in which I can contribute. There are many Liberians, young people, Abraham Bikers. Shout out to you guys who are on the ground trying to start businesses and doing your best. Keep hope alive, and Liberia is going to be a great place. And no government is going to do it. We're going to do it because we're going to build the institutions that need to be built. We're going to fight against the corrupt people. We're going to fight against the people who are destroying our country, and we're going to do it academically. So that's the idea. We're not going to sit back any longer for someone to come and take our country down the drain and say nothing about it. We're going to write about you. We're going to challenge you to come here. If you, again, if you're an educated person, then there's no reason why you should hide behind any, podium. Again, we're calling on the finance minister, the central bank governor. These are all fine economics people. Come here, tell us your policy. Let us ask you questions. If you can't do that, then in my opinion, you don't deserve the office because you're a public servant and you should be accessible to the people at any time. Thank you, and God bless you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And we thank all our guests, our audience, all our viewers on Facebook. We want to say thank you so much for those who participated. If you have interest or if you have any topic that you want us to discuss, please feel free to send us email, focusonliberia@gmail, or you can just inbox the Focus on Liberia Facebook page. And you can also contact us if you want to become a part of this forum and also a part of the Economic and Business Society. As Alex said, next week we're going to be talking about food economics. And so if you love food, just tune in. Also on Saturday, we're going to have a show on the Bujumbura refugee camp. The camp is still there. Some of us, we lived there for a couple of years. Quite recently, there was a police and army presence. About 400 army people went and 200 police officers, they were on the camp arresting people, and they arrest over 100 persons. Not all of them were Liberians because they believe there have been some crimes going on in the camp. So we want to talk to the camp leadership to see how things are there. What are some of the updates? And that will come on Saturday. Then on Sunday, we're going to continue our African immigration, African unity and collaboration series. Our guests, we have a guest from the Ivory Coast and one guest from South Africa. We want to bring all African immigrants together so that we can collaborate and impact our respective African communities here and also our countries back home. How do we do that? We want to get ideas from people. So we're going to have Dr. Emil Tabie from the Ivory Coast and Isabel from South Africa. You don't want to miss that. With all the things going on in South Africa, we want to see what the South Africans have to say about what's going on there. So keep tuned to Focus on Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Support us, subscribe to our Facebook channel. If you have something once in a while, it could be $5, $25, $50. Cash at us at Focus on Liberia. That's the $ FOL 2017. And help us grow this and also keep paying our bills. Until next time, I want to say thank you so much on behalf of my co-host, Danielle knuckles-guishard, and also my guest relations manager, Stephanie Setro. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Good night, and God bless you all. Let me see if I love music. Okay, so thanks for joining. Good night now, and see you again.
Thank you very much.